Hello, everybody, and welcome to LoreMaster Investigation, where we sit on top of our floating magic castle, drink some elven moon juice, and think upon the tabletop role playing game genre. I'm Cody.
And I'm Joe, and now I'm thinking that we scrap all of this
Uh huh.
and we just come up with like fun, nerdy cocktail recipes.
Dude, I'm
Uh,
drinking my elven moon
yeah,
juice,
Elven
also
Moon
known
Juice.
as water, right now.
Well, so now I'm thinking like, what would like an Elven Moon Juice be? And like, I know that there's like stuff out there, like stuff that I don't particularly enjoy
Sure.
consuming, but like, have you ever heard of like Vinique?
No.
It's like wine with like glitter in it, like drinkable
Huh.
glitter, and like it
Yeah.
has this like really cool like cue ball effect or like magic
Huh.
8 ball effect. And my sister loved it back when like she like was drinking like stuff that was like basically sugary syrup
Right,
alcohol.
right.
And it's like, man, like, and I think it's like one of those deals where it's like it was kind of designed to look pretty on like a backlit, bar in a place, but like, man, maybe like a thing for lore masters is we both come up with like something that sounds fun and fantasy-y, and we come back
Sure.
with like a cock slash knocks depending on how we're feeling tail recipe
Yeah. I,
or
I
not.
like it.
I
I,
don't
I
know. I'm
mean,
just
I'm
putting
not
that out.
a
I'm putting that out in the ether.
Right, right. If anyone wants us to do that, I'm not really a mixologist. I've gone from God, this is a side tangent that we've never done before,
That's
but
true.
my alcohol consumption was proof, like your Smirnoff Mike's Hard, you
Sure.
start slow.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then I got into just like absolutely atrocious like liquors and things like that. Like I used to fucking drink bottles of Jägermeister until I had one too many nights where
Oh
all I
boy.
could taste and smell was Jägermeister. Yeah. That's the drink that like creeps up on you for sure. Like
Yeah, for sure.
you'll just be kind of like hanging out and it's like, yeah, I drank half this bottle and like I'm totally fine. And then all of a sudden you're just like, oh no, this is the part where I'm stupid drunk and I need help getting to my apartment. And luckily, I was in a really good situation when I turned 21, and like my drinking buddies, we lived like in the same apartment complex. So we would literally just like walk to each other's places, get hammered, and then go back to our separate
I feel
apartments
that.
and stuff like that.
I
But
drink beer.
yeah, and then after that horrific like 3 4 years of just like drinking liquor until I got sick of it, I went to beer, and now I'm kind
Hell
of
yeah.
like now I partake in a little bit of beer and liquor, but I try not to.
I feel it.
Yeah,
So
so
anyway, what
that's
nerdy stuff have you been up to as of late?
not alcohol, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
same.
Well, update. This episode will come out probably later after the announcement, but my internet's fixed, at least for the
Yay.
time being.
Okay, that's good.
I had to stop streaming because
Ooh.
my upload speeds couldn't get over the like basically the bare minimum for like something that's of quality
Wow.
on like Twitch and all that. So I've been kind of going back and forth. Like I had them come over like on four separate occasions to try to figure out what was wrong. Like it was just a whole mess. So kind of nerdy, but not like the usual nerdy that I'm into. But
Sure.
uh come this Monday or whenever this comes out, it'll probably actually be next or the Tuesday. Anyway, it'll be long news if you're familiar with our my streaming schedule. But yeah, I've got it fixed, so I can't wait to start playing Persona 5 again because I
Ooh.
need my anime high schoolers taking down the man.
Damn. That sounds like fun. I've played a
Yeah,
little I've actually played a little bit of that game.
it's good.
Uh
It's really long, but it's good.
yeah. I mean, like when I say I played a little bit of it, I mean like literally I got through like the tutorial dungeon.
Yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah.
or memory or emotional jail cell or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
there's yeah, the first like palace or whatever, you like get locked in and like kind of teach you the bare basics of
Yeah.
how the game works. Yeah,
Mm.
it's one of those games where every single time they introduce like a new palace or like a new thing, like there's always just new stuff happening. Like I've never felt really stagnant in that game, which is like bizarre because it's like I've heard for some people it's like a 500-hour game. I'm not going to play it for 500 hours, but like
Sure.
for all the story stuff that I've done, like nothing has really felt like this is getting old. Like by the time it starts to even remotely feel like that, they introduce new mechanics, new characters, a whole new dungeon. Like it's a lot because it's like an entire like 5 seasons of anime, but like also a video game. So like there's a lot of like going, sitting there and talking to people and stuff like that. But like yeah, it never feels like stagnant or like anything like that. But anyways, enough about my experiences. What nerdy stuff have you been up to?
Have you watched any of The Floor is Lava on Netflix?
Yeah, I watched the first 2 episodes, I think. I think
Yeah.
I made it to the second episode and then I was kind of like over the kind of
Like you got it.
cringy daytime like television stuff that they would keep doing.
Yeah, I mean their narration is a little much,
I
but
For the first episode, I hated the three brothers so much. Like it was the worst. Like I was so like upset. Like I was just visually upset because it was just like it felt really like toxic, even though like they were trying to like be really like not professional, that's not the right word, but like they were trying to be very like nice for the TV because they're like being televised, but like it felt so like gross and weird
yeah.
and
I
oof.
don't know. It's good to throw on if you're like having trouble falling asleep at like, 1 a.m. and you need something. But I've been watching that show. It's kind of given me that serotonin um burst of like Legends of the Hidden Temple or Double Dare or things like that. So,
You know, I see. I love those shows. Those are really fun. I think the only thing that I would have changed about the floor is lava is like just get like the weird like family like because
sure.
it's like most of the time it's like families or like brothers or whatever, but like get the weird like talking bits out like in between it, like just show us them like going on the lava or whatever, like tell me if they fucking like you know take a nosedive into that lava for me, please. Like I don't need like the weird like my brother was the shortest one, so we used to pick on him, haha, and then it's like goes back to the action. I'm like, why do I need that in my life?
I feel that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like when it's not doing that, it's really entertaining to watch. Like I'm like, yes, like I want to see you fucking. I think it's like that, and maybe it's just me, but it's like that. Like I'm really kind of just looking for who eats it the worst, you know?
Sure.
Because like some of those are like I know I could never do that shit. Like
Yeah,
half the things on there are like, yeah, you have to use your full upper body strength, and I got these fucking noodle arms, and it's like, nope. The
sure.
best I could do is like if it was all legs, I might be able to do it,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, like the one thing was like it's wobbly monkey bars, and I was like, yeah, no, thank you. That's not for me.
Hard
Um,
pass.
I have some lower body strength, but yeah, not enough to get me through whatever that is. But anyway,
Do you hear
yeah,
that off in the distance?
is it a grumble growling? And I
It's
hear
a
it.
bunch of growling in the corner.
Grr, grr, grumble, grr.
Bark.
It does it in stereo now
Yeah.
in two distinct tonal um that's what I'm looking for.
Oh, it's like a
Tonal
Turian from Mass Effect. It's got like two different tones that it's playing at the
oh
same time.
wait wait, wait. Turians were
Uh, Garrus Vicarian,
yeah,
if
okay,
memory
wait,
serves.
could they speak in two different oh they could.
Yeah,
What
well, when they would talk, they had two octaves playing at the same time, and they would like it wasn't quite the same octave. Like one, it was like obvious that like there was a person talking, and then they had a lowered pitch that was playing just a little bit like it almost felt like it was almost a little bit behind it, so it had like a really cool effect. That's what the book's doing right now.
What were those big elephant things
The big elephant things.
in Mass Effect? Who like
Gosh, it's been
they
so long since I played those games.
they
I can't
didn't have
remember.
emotions.
Oh, shit. Yeah, and they made they had like a funny like movie in universe about one of those things being like a special agent, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
It's the Elcor.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I liked those guys.
Elcors
Those
are
guys
pretty
were
cool.
fun.
Yeah,
But anyway,
they would tell you in English before they would finish. Like they would be like, "Happy, I am so happy for you," and like
because
with great sadness, and then like say something like it was pretty cool. I like it.
like I think their emotions were like done through like subtle facial expressions and
And
like
nobody but Elcor
pheromones.
could see
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But anyway, the book is growling like a Turian,
yeah,
and it's hopped up on my lap,
nice.
and I'm like, oh, who's a good book? And the book's like, me, I'm a good book. And then the book opens up.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow,
that was the Foley work that I'm bringing to the table this week.
this was really good Foley work. I color me immersed.
All right, the book says, "Hey, LoreMasters, I'm a long time listener, first time writer. Uh, I really liked your episode last week about knowing when to act and react as a dungeon master, but I have a question. Let's say that I have to scrap a dungeon. Is that the last step?" And
Wow,
that's from uh
Sleepless in Seattle.
um yeah, uh sad behind the screen.
Ooh, that was actually a really good one. I was like, I wasn't expecting the creativity already. We haven't even got to the topic.
That's fair. Yeah. So
So
anyway, I think what that question asker was asking was so like let's say if you listen to our of our podcast eligible episode from last time, um or podcast award eligible, because it's certainly a podcast. It's not podcast eligible, it is a podcast. We talked a little bit about like knowing when to act and react as a DM, and one of
yeah,
the suggestions that we threw out there was like sometimes it means like, scrapping stuff, but do you have to scrap stuff all the time? Cody, your thoughts?
do I have to scrap? No, I would never. Uh, so I had this problem early on when I started being a game master, dungeon master, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
I would craft things, and then in the narrative it didn't fit anymore because the players went left when I wanted them to go right, or you know, maybe the tone has changed and now the story is about X instead of Y. And so I did a ton of like, like, oh shit, well, there goes that NPC or that town that I created or that dungeon. And um I'm basically here to advocate, like, if you have something that doesn't work right away or doesn't fit in the narrative in the current moment, don't throw it away. Just put it somewhere else in your game. Recycle that shit, keep it around. I know we talked a little bit about it in the action versus reaction episode, but that content that doesn't work, like whether it's an encounter or whatever, like that's just future content waiting to happen. Like I have like a full toolbox filled with like whenever I'm like, fuck, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I just go into my toolbox of like, well, what kind of cool encounters did I throw away because my party is, doing something different. And then I go, oh, that's cool. All I got to do is tweak a couple things and it fits right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that a lot. Like there are certain NPCs that I created like ages ago that I have pulled into our current campaign that like you know, they're just like I just was like, man, I really like this NPC, but it didn't really work in our last campaign, so I used it in this one because you're in a big city where there's all sorts of characters and whatnot, and
Uh-huh.
I can just do that. Well, those are my thoughts. You should always recycle real world and in the tabletop role playing game world.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Just because it's like, so this is an area that I don't have quite as much experience in,
sure,
but I I'm building it up thanks to our other shows, just like One Shot, where I took the reins on not Dungeons and Dragons necessarily, but sat behind the screen and led something of an adventure. Um, so like when you're going to recycle something, like I you throw in things like bandits or skeletons or things like that. Do you like take notes of like what your advised CR level is and just like try to find a creature that just like slots in there really nicely? Like for instance, like if I could use an example from the six um campaign,
sure.
there was like a thing where we were in like a swamp fight and there
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah, yeah.
alligators. Like, let's say that we
Mhm.
skip that encounter and you wanted to use it later. Like, would you replace the alligators with like, let's say, like I don't even know if these are comparable CRs, but like let's just say like replace the alligators with like a bear or like a wolf or so like a group of wolves or something like that. Is that like how
You
you approach
know,
it out of curiosity?
so yeah, kind of. I mean, so here's the thing, right? I think at the end of the day, I mostly, when it comes to fifth edition balance, I often just kind of throw what I find interesting together, and then like as long as it's not grotesquely over the deadly margin, I'm like, that works because the balance in 5e past like a certain point is just absolutely like bonkers broken for
Uh-huh.
a myriad of reasons.
Sure.
In the case of yeah, if you were to if I were to take that encounter where it's like, oh, you are trudging through the swamp and alligators ambush you. So like I might hold on to that for granted I also play multiple games, so like I can use that same encounter for my other group that
Sure.
has no idea like what it is that I'm doing with you guys. Um I could also wait until I get to a different area and yeah, I could use a different CR creature or whatever to simulate that because like the idea in that case is like okay you're being ambushed in a swamp, the swamp has kind of got like very difficult terrain. It should be hard to see them, so yeah, I would just take whatever else is in the book and be like if a crocodile doesn't work, maybe there's a giant crocodile, or I know there's a froghemoth, which is what I used later in that kind of arc, if you will,
Mhm.
to simulate this similar things. It really depends on the party, like
Yeah.
obviously, you know you, balance is a bit of a key there, but once you get to a certain point, you kind of have to just throw balance, to the wind and kind of tweak and tinker on the fly as things are happening. But
Got
yeah,
it.
I would upscale or put it to another party who's at a similar level. It really depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll even just be like, oh well, two crocodiles would be too much for this group. Well, I'll just do one crocodile.
Okay.
Or if like the other group is like maybe a level higher, maybe I throw way more crocodiles and then I rework it, the narrative being like, oh, you stumbled into a den of crocodiles, like this is a family of them, and you walked into their home and suddenly they're all scared and just like lashing out in anger or whatever. Like now I've even though I was using the same thing that I didn't use for my other group, I'm
Uh-huh.
still using it, and like I've tweaked it so that it like still fits, however, and like have also changed it a little so that it feels like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And the thing is, when you're recycling content, unless you tell the players like, "Oh man, you missed out on this NPC. He was so cool and his name was Vlad and he had like a cool accent." And then he
Mhm.
shows up later, like that's when it's kind of like, "Wait a minute. Like
Sure.
you just wanted to use him. Like if the party doesn't know what you're using, you can put that shit anywhere, right?" So like
Yeah.
say the party doesn't immediately do your cool encounter you found online or whatever, you can recycle that later when they're like, oh, now we need to go to a different area, and then boom, you can use your encounter again. Like, yeah, it feels very wasteful to like, especially if you're like home brewing encounters and you're like really kind of getting in there and coming up with some really cool stuff. Like, use it. Just if it doesn't work out that first time, just like tweak it and put it somewhere else. Like, still use that stuff. If you save all that stuff for later, you have this arsenal of cool stuff that you can always pull back on. And if you ever like, and we talked about this before about inspiration and kind of getting into like a creative block, like this is the perfect time to use that stuff, is when you're like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm creatively drained right now and the party is moving way faster than I anticipated. It's like, well, throw the haunted house encounter in there. Like, say they got to go find the MacGuffin and now it's in the haunted house. Like, they don't know.
Sure.
Like, unless you're like giving them play by play behind the scenes, like they're never gonna know. So like,
Sure.
as long as you feel confident in the way you do stuff and make sure that like when you recycle it, it still makes sense to where they're at and where they're going, you're totally good.
Mhm. Yeah, cause like, that was something that, like, I was thinking about, and once again, like, I don't have quite as much experience on this side of the things, but, I think that there's a certain level of logic to, like, don't throw like, a Helm's Deep in the middle of a swamp with no, um, without any, like, wall to defend or something like that.
Sure.
Um or similarly, um, don't, don't have I don't know, like, an alligator pop up in the middle of a town square unless it's, like, being manipulated by unless you have, like, a well-established zoo, that there is a zoo breakout, uh, or, like, a magical, meddler, but one of the things about Dungeons and Dragons that I think is super cool is the fact that, everything does have like a challenge rating number. So like, if you had this really stellar idea and your party's just refusing to go to a city for some reason, like
I wouldn't know what that's like.
it's
I
it's
don't
very,
feel personally attacked right now.
hey man, I was trying very hard to get them to go to that city, not knowing that it was the city that you wanted us to go to, because it didn't feel like it was the city you wanted us. But like what I'm saying though is like, if your party is refusing to go into a city and you just have this like totally killer, like back alley brawl planned, like it's something you could slot into, like maybe like Robin Hood's Merry Men, like descend from the trees and you have a backwoods brawl.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're having trouble figuring out how to recycle the content because you've like, because sometimes it's like, oh, I've established that the encounters in a bar and they're brawling and stuff, and it feels weird to move it into a forest. Take take that content and really look at the meat of what you want it to do and not necessarily like the narrative flavor to it. So like in your example of a back alley brawl, you really just want people to brawl, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the encounter. It's like a bare knuckles fight. So in the forest, maybe there's a tribe of like, bugbears or something, and they have a thing that you want, or they might have information to help you get through the forest, but they don't respect you because you didn't bare knuckle fight one of them. So now you've got your bare knuckle brawl, but you've just changed it so that instead of like being a bar fight that breaks out, you now have this like, oh, now there's this like chieftain bugbear who's like, I'm not like you need to leave or you need to fight me. And if you win, you have my respect.
Mhm.
So it's really about especially like because I know I would get into that a lot too, where I would create something and then I would hold on to it, but I'd be like, "Ugh, but but there's not a haunted house over there, or this like rail cart thing like wouldn't exist here. Like, well, what is it that I really want to do, right? Like take the like go down to the base mechanics and then work kind of narratively work back so that you can find a way to make it fit. Because at the end of the day, when you're making that stuff, in most cases, it's about the encounter. It's about the mechanics. It's what you want the players to feel. So if you can find that like essence, like that very like the font of what made that really cool, then you can just build onto wherever you want so that it fits.
Yeah. No, yeah, because you know, this is one of the reasons I kind of was drawn to this question was this was something that I personally was curious about as a like person who is kind of shifting from being a player to, mm, you know, like in a different timeline, I would probably be running a campaign for some of my sister's friends, and this was something that like I was personally curious about just to like know when to do it and like and how to do it, I don't even know if respect like how to do it but not make it seem like it was a huge deal, you know?
Yeah,
Um
you want recycled content to feel like it fit there in the first place because I think it's kind of like I think the best example of this is do you remember Super Mario 3?
I do, yeah.
You remember how like the aesthetic of that is like it's all a stage and it feels kind of weird because like, there's like play curtains and like things are held up by nails and bolts and things like that and it feels kind of like a show.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So like it's kind of a similar thing, right? Like you want it to be thematic to whatever it is you're doing. And so knowing where like cuz I think and I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure Nintendo did that on purpose to have that kind of like almost play theme so that when they were building it, they knew like, okay, well, we have this kind of theme. Now we need to make sure that everything kind of fits that. It's basically what you're doing is like, if you're like, okay, they're going into a scary forest. Well, thematically, the encounters should be on like, they shouldn't be like, oh, you fight a polar bear on a frost mound in the middle of the forest because that feels weirdly out of place and you kind of have to like weirdly explain how that works. But like if you put a haunted mansion in the forest, it's like, yep, that checks out. Like
Sure.
it's
There's more
about
there's more of a
knowing,
level of believability there.
right. And I think that's the thing with recycling content is um basically find the essence of what you really want out of the content you're recycling and then just fit the plausibility or the theme or whatever you need to make it feel like, yeah, this was here all along. And that will be a good way to help you recycle content in a way that doesn't make your players go, wait, what? I don't get
Mm.
this. And then like you have to explain like, oh, well, this was a cool encounter that I had for another play. Like that feels weird. Um, I think at the end of the day, you like if you're new to GMing or what have you, and you haven't experienced this yet, trust me, you will. It is inevitable that your players will do something you won't expect, and you'll be like, ugh, I can't use that cool NPC. It's like, no, just use it later. And, recycling content is kind of the nitty gritty of that. And I think, yeah, I think when you start doing the game master thing for a while, or at least enough where like your players do that first, like they go left instead of going right, or they chose X instead of Y, like then you'll be like, well, shit, I had this encounter that doesn't work anymore. And instead of trying to like force it to fit, because that can be that leads to some of like those railroading experiences that people dislike.
Yeah.
But if you learn to take the essence of what you want and being able to like build upon that so that you can take the cool encounter that you liked and put it just about anywhere, then you will be in a really good spot because you will find yourself finding things online. You know, you might even find some stuff on these shows that we do. They're like, oh man, I really loved that thing that they did. How do I put that in my, put that in my game? That's recycling content, baby. Like you're just taking the stuff that you made or what you found online and refashioning it, repurposing it so that it works in your game. Like there are tons of encounters that I did in our first campaign that were basically the essence of other campaigns that I've already been watching and looking at and being like, wow, that was a fucking cool puzzle. I need to add that puzzle into my game.
Hmm.
And you eventually start doing that as like, oh, I had this really cool encounter planned for you guys, but you guys didn't do that, so I'm just going to save it for later. And, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, thank you. This was very illuminating.
I am what you would call an Illuminati. I mean, illuminated individual. I'm not, um, anyways.
I'm not a
eh,
Rosicrucian because do you know how you know if a person's a Rosicrucian? They say that they're a Rosicrucian. That's
what
the
is
first
that?
rule. It's like another like Illuminati style like
Oh, like
secret organization that's
Freemasons,
like
all
yeah,
kind of.
controlling the world. And I
Hmm.
guess like the one thing about it is that like a true Rosicrucian is never allowed to say that they're a Rosicrucian. So like if someone's like, "Yeah, I'm a Rosicrucian," it's like, "Guy's not a Rosicrucian."
That's not how
Um
that works.
anyway, yeah, any final thoughts or
Uh, at the end of the day, unless you're recycling the same content with the same group and it becomes apparently obvious, it's really easy to pretend an improv that the content was always there in the first place.
got it.
Because at the end of the day, unless they can like read your diary that you're doing all this in, like there no one's ever gonna know.
Heck yeah.
Like unless you rip something from like, I think I did this a couple times where like thematically I pulled something from like the Adventure Zone and you were the one who introduced me to the Adventure Zone. And so like it became very apparent like, oh, I see where this came from. So like, just keep an eye out for that stuff. But at the end of the day, it, it's very unlikely for your players to even find out. So recycling content is the best way to keep you sane and not like pull out your hair because you spent 5 days working on an encounter that your players got through in a single like spell.
Yeah. Hey, I respect that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I think my thoughts would be like I didn't bring I guess a whole heck of a lot to the table this time around, but I think the biggest one is like I already have like a page of I like um ideas, and then it's just like just build that page, let it grow out and find the right place, right time to use it, and if you can't find it here, hey, there's going to be other games. You might
Yeah,
not be like
100%.
Cody and run like 5 games at a time, but
Well, okay. That feels very specific.
use it in a one shot.
That's
All right.
true. That's true.
Hey Cody,
Yeah.
if people like this episode and they want to learn more, where's the places they can learn more?
They can go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com where you can see all of our shows as they go live and a little brief description as to basically what the hell we're doing on the other shows too. And then if you scroll down past our bios, past like when we're streaming on Twitch, you can find a little questionnaire to basically, we want to hear from you and hear about the things that you want us to talk about in the tabletop role playing games spectrum, whether it be GM topics, topics, specific game topics, like you name it, we want to hear about it and we want to talk about it on the show. And you can do that by filling out the form on the website.
And if people want to listen to the episode, but they don't necessarily use the same podcast thing that you use, where are some places that you can tell them to find our podcast?
We are on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify. We're on basically any RSS feed. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
And hey, are there any social medias that people can find us at and like send us funny things or learn updates about us and our shows and find out
Yeah,
what we think is funny?
of course. They can go to our Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. where we update when shows go live and when I stream and basically everything in between. And then if you go if you peruse the Facebook and Instagram mediums, we're also there. You just got to search Fandom Roulette.
Yeah. Also, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe,
Yeah,
leave a comment, ring the bell,
smash
um,
it.
tell a friend, all of that wonderful stuff. Because hey, if we move up them ranks and we get subscribers and things like that, then hey, more people and more fun.
Yeah, it'll help us figure out what it is that you like and how we
Yeah,
can create content that's better suited for you.
for you. Then I point awkwardly at the
Yeah,
thing.
but we point awkwardly on an audio medium.
So anyway, hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to
Yeah,
Phantom Roulette. Signing off for Phantom Roulette, this is Joe,
and I'm Cody.
and as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.